The auditorium buzzed with laughter as the students pointed at the janitor, daring him to play the cello. He was just supposed to mop the floor, but when he sat down and wrapped his arms around the instrument a broken bar, everything changed. By the time he finished, the billionaire in the front row was wiping tears from his eyes, and no one ever looked at the janitor the same way again. Daniel Carter didn't stand out at Stanton Academy, not in a school where students wore blazers worth more than his monthly rent. He pushed a mop through marbled halls and worked 2 extra shifts a week just to afford his daughter Ellie's asthma meds. He was a single dad, widowed too soon, doing everything he could to hold his little world together. He kept his head down, barely spoke unless spoken to, and never complained even when the job meant scrubbing toilets after frat parties or unclogging sinks stuffed with ramen noodles. But there was one place he always avoided: the music hall. No one knew that Daniel once filled concert halls himself. He had toured Europe as a cello prodigy in his 20s, played under crystal chandeliers, and stood for standing ovations beside his wife Grace, the gifted violinist. That was another life. Before the accident, before the hospital bills, before he sold his cello to pay for Grace's funeral. Now he just cleaned up after rich kids. That Friday afternoon, Daniel was mopping near the backstage when a group of business students, well dressed, cocked and noticed him. They were rehearsing for a charity gala that night, one attended by powerful donors. One of them, clearly amused, nudged his friend and said loud enough to echo, "Hey, let's get the janitor to play. Might be fun for the blooper reel." The others chuckled, until one turned and shouted, "Yo, sir, you know how to play cello?" Daniel stiffened. Before he could reply, a voice cut through the room, low, confident. "Let him." All eyes turned. It was Victor Langford, the billionaire investor, the guest of honor that evening. He leaned forward from the front row, smirking. Why not? Give him a shot. Daniel's heart pounded. He hadn't touched a cello in nearly a decade. The calluses were gone, the rhythm a broken bar rusty. But something inside him stirred. Not pride, not ego, something else. He walked over. The cello leaned against its stand, polished, expensive, untouched. He sat down slowly. The room fell awkwardly quiet. A few students raised phones, half expecting a disaster. Then Daniel closed his eyes a broken bar and began to play. At first, the sound was fragile, unsure, like a whisper waking up after years of silence. But then, it grew deeper, richer, warmer. The notes floated like memories, full of heartbreak and hope. He wasn't just playing musica, he was telling a story. The story of loss, of holding a sick wife's hand through endless nights. The story of falling apart, and learning to live again for the sake of a little girl with Grace's eyes. The room shifted, the laughter vanished, even the billionaire stopped checking his watch. When Daniel reached the final note, he held it just long enough for the silence to breathe. And in that silence, a broken bar, a single tear slid down Victor Langford's cheek. The students stood frozen. Victor rose to his feet, slow and stunned, as if he'd just remembered something important, as something he'd buried beneath stock portfolios and private jets. He walked up to Daniel and extended his hand. "What's your name?" "Daniel Carter." Victor nodded, voice low. "You've got a gift, Mr. Carter. Don't let the world forget that." That night, Victor Langford made a quiet donation to a music foundation in Grace Carter's name. And a week later, a brand new cello arrived at Daniel's doorstep, wrapped in gold ribbon with a note that simply said, "Play again." Ending note. The janitor wasn't invisible anymore, and he didn't just find his music again, he found a piece of himself he thought was lost forever. Uplifting message for viewers: sometimes, the people we overlook are carrying the most beautiful stories. Kindness, talent, and resilience don't always wear suits or sit in boardrooms. They mop floors, they raise children, and sometimes as a broken bar they play the cello. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. There are more untold stories out there waiting to inspire you. A currency I diaris Sedilla.